Here's the problem that you're trying to solve. You're an early stage founder, and no matter what you've tried, you still can't seem to figure out a way to break through and get traction in your marketplace. You've done it all. You've hired outsourced SDR teams, you've hired internally, you've probably brought on some heavy hitting executive to try to figure this out. The fact of the matter is that you're at your wit's end in trying to figure out how you can get traction. But for whatever reason, you're still stuck somewhere between 0 and 1 and don't have a clear idea on how you can move forward. That problem set is what I talk about all the time on this show. In the first episode that we did, I talk about what's going on. In the second episode, we talk about why it's happening. Why are your customers behaving this way? In this episode, we're going to spend our time talking about how you can fix what's going on and put yourself on the right foot so that you can move towards traction. If this is the first time you're catching me, make sure you drop me a subscribe. Drop me a comment as well if there's anything specific that you want me to tackle. But definitely make sure you check the first 2 episodes in this playlist so that you have the full context of what we're going to be talking about week in and week out. And if this is your first time that you're catching me, I think it's important for me to share with you a little bit of a backstory so you know where I'm coming from when I talk about this stuff. I've spent my entire career in sales, and typically in that career, I've spent most of my time in startup environments, building something from nothing, whether it was building a brand new territory, launching an entire product that nobody heard of, whether it was opening up entire new markets. Everything that I talk about is from those experiences. I've always been in that 0 to 1 environment, so I've lived the life that you're living right now. And in terms of results, I've built multi-million-dollar pipelines everywhere that I've been. Using the approach that I'm talking about, I've been able to turn around founder-led organizations and have them generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in pipeline in a matter of months. I've been able to turn around their entire outbound effort from the type of outbound that was generating no responses to a type of outbound strategy and tactics that yielded 10 plus meetings per week with their ICP. And this is stuff that I've repeated in the HR tech space, the TA tech space, the ed tech space, executive coaching, staffing. I've even done it in niche software environments, selling to the architects, engineering, and contractor space. So the stuff that I'm going to talk about on a consistent basis works in all of these industries. You might have to make some tweaks to fit your industry, but the principles work everywhere. And they work whether you're talking about a technology product or a services offering that you have to bring to market. It's been successful in both of those types of environments. So if this is the type of stuff that keeps you up at night, definitely subscribe to the page and you'll have week to week content that addresses the things that you've seen. And this is all battle tested stuff that I'm still using right now. And I'm still working with clients on how to execute for their businesses. So if you're looking for fractional help, that's an area where I can help as well in putting this into motion. When we look at the situation that you're facing, we talked about that extensively in the first episode. We talked about what's happening from a buyer behavior perspective and why buyers are behaving the way that they are in the first 2 episodes that I covered on this channel. This episode is going to be focused on how you actually overcome that. When we think about how we can change the situation that we're facing, we're really talking about a mindset shift. And before we get into the specifics of how we shift the mindset, I want to give you a couple of examples of where I'm going with this. So I'm a runner. I'm not a fast runner, but I run a fair amount on a week-to-week basis, and I typically knock out 1 or 2 half marathons every year. Now, stick with me here. This is going somewhere. So over the last several years, I've been having issues with my shins and ankles when I ran. And I've run with the same brand of shoes for the better part of 10 years. I used Brooks as my running shoe. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, why my legs would always crap out on me or cause issues when I tried to stretch out into longer runs. So when faced with that, last year, what I did is I went with a different type of shoes. It's a different type of architecture than my original shoe. All last year, no leg issues. And this year I'm ahead of pace where I can get back to running a couple of half marathons. So the reason why I mention that is whenever we talk about changing mindsets, people always get weirded out by it because change management is tough. Changing is tough. You'd rather stick with what's worked for you up until this point. And that's really why we're having this conversation anyways. What you're doing right now isn't working. It's not getting you traction. That's why you're actually watching this and trying to figure out how you can change it. And that's all has to do with shifting your mindset. What we're looking at in these conversations is changing the type of shoes that you're using to run so that you can actually run faster and easier and get the job done that you have in front of you. One of the things that's important for everybody to understand is that you can't treat the buying world as if they're ready to buy right now. There's a great book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And in that book, the entire book is useful. But in that book, one of the things that Chet Holmes talks about is how when you're looking at your market At any given time, there's 3% of the marketplace that is looking to buy right now. Another 7% might be convinced into entering into a buy cycle if you say the right things or do the right things. That leaves 90% of the marketplace that doesn't care about you, doesn't know you, isn't looking to buy, isn't looking to do anything. And I say all of that because what have we been trained to do as sellers when we're trying to get a product out? We call as many people as possible, and we use some version of the same message under the assumption that we have to smile and dial our way into a buyer. So what does that actually end up doing? You have 100% of the market, but only 3% are ready to buy right now. An additional 7% could be ready, but we're calling 100% of our marketplace acting like they are ready to buy, and we annoy the hell out of them. Are you tracking so far what's going on? There's a reason why people don't return our calls, because we treat everybody the same. So when we're talking about a mindset shift, the current mindset is treat everybody as a buyer. The mindset shift that everybody needs to make is asking themselves the question, how do I create an environment where everybody will want to talk to me? And the answer to that is to stop thinking about discovery as a stage and start thinking about discovery as a process. That's the mindset shift that's going to help you have meaningful conversations with everybody in your TAM without pissing anybody off. So when I talk about turning discovery into a process instead of a stage, what does that actually look like? What it means is that instead of going to market as a product-obsessed person, you become problem-obsessed. And if you haven't defined what the problem you solve for is, or from the customer's perspective, you become customer-obsessed. And what that means is that you turn the entire exercise of getting your product to market into an experience that's designed to give you high touch, multiple touches for each potential customer, and learn from them through their own words what works and what doesn't work in terms of your product or service that you're offering. That's a different way to go to market. And you might be thinking, Jim, that kind of makes sense, but how do we get people to talk to us? You might be sitting there hearing that, turning discovery into a process instead of a stage, and thinking, how is that supposed to actually help me talk to more people? Because if they're not talking to me in the first place, if I change my messaging to, hey, I want to learn more about you, they're still not going to talk to me. It's not as simple as changing it to, I want to learn a little bit more about you. It's about creating an ecosystem and creating a process that facilitates conversation all through the buyer's life cycle and all through the selling process. And that's where you taking the bull by the horns and embedding content into how you go to market is going to be a game changer in your ability to talk to customers. Because what that allows you to do is that it allows you to embed discovery through that entire life cycle. And it makes the entire process of navigating the buyer journey as frictionless as possible. Part of the reason why buyers are avoiding us at all costs is because every conversation that we have with them is all about, hey, come look at my product. It's not focused on them. It's not focused on their problems. It's not focused on their world. It's not focused on anything that is important to them. And it's not focused on meeting them where they are. And that's where shifting your mindset to looking at discovery as a process versus a stage changes the game. Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to meet your customers where they are and learn where they are from a problem perspective and also from a product and awareness perspective, which allows you to make a collaborative decision on how to best move forward. When you think about that, what you're doing is you're truly building a relationship sale. And you're still going to be challenging them through the process in terms of some of the assumptions that they might have. But you never get that opportunity if you are using the playbook that we've all been taught, which is just keep dialing and keep emailing and keep spamming and keep DMing as much as possible, and eventually somebody will raise their hand. Meanwhile, you've burned 97% of your marketplace to try to find the 3% of people that are in the buy cycle. And out of those 3%, if they're talking to you, you're probably already behind because they've already had conversations over the long run. The reason why it's so critical to shift your mindset here is because it allows you to be in the room when they're making those decisions on if they have a problem, defining what the problem is, defining the potential solution set, and then going into identifying potential vendors to solve that issue. But if you're catching it using that 3% approach, the smile and dial approach, you're always going to be behind. What shifting your mindset into using discovery as a process versus a stage is it allows you to get involved in deals much earlier. And it allows you to get the position that we all want, which is to be that trusted advisor. That doesn't happen if you're just spamming your TAM. What this allows you to do is really take the persona of a reporter and a researcher as a founder, and it gets you in all of these different spaces that you don't have visibility into, and it gives you an opportunity to go into those selling conversations collaboratively. And that makes the entire process as seamless as possible. So if you've liked what I've talked about so far, make sure you drop a comment. If you have any questions, make sure you drop those in the comments as well. I'll answer any of those questions that you have, and we'll get into more detail on the mechanics of the how on later episodes. I'd also be interested in hearing from you on what topics you want me to cover from a 0 to 1 founder-led startup perspective that you've been struggling with, because odds are I've probably dealt with those too. So definitely drop those into the comments. The bottom line of what I'm talking about here, in the first episode, we talked about what's going on. In the second episode, we talked about why buyers are behaving the way that they're buying. And in this conversation, we've talked about how you need to shift your mindset and why you need to shift your mindset to meet the market where they are. All of this is designed for you to get unstuck. And we'll be getting into even more detail down the road on the specifics of how you get unstuck and how you actually utilize content the right way to build rapport, trust, and credibility at scale. So we'll cover that in future episodes. Even up to this point, these are the exact elements and the exact journey points that I went through to figure this out for myself. And remember, the first instance where I actually did this was during the housing crash, where I was in the architect, engineering, contractor space selling a niche software solution. And we grew like crazy. We went from 40 clients to several hundred clients, and we opened 2 international markets using elements of what I'm talking about here to grow. So this works, and it works especially well when you're dealing with rough economic times and a competitive landscape, because when isn't it rough and when isn't it competitive? The big lesson here is to stop thinking about discovery as a stage and start looking at it as a process. And the implication when you do that is that you are focused on the customer problem. You're not focused on the product or the solution that you bring to the table. You're focused on understanding the customer problem. And that's going to be a game changer in terms of giving you what you need to get traction. Hope you liked the conversation. If you haven't already, make sure you drop me a subscribe. Drop your comments there as well. And then make sure you tune in on the next episode, where I actually talk about how you get started on building out a content strategy that actually drives pipeline and helps you go from 0 to 1 to growth to traction.